I'm Jake Miller from the Educational Duct Tape Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect those of others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Bryon Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content or an audiobook, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, BryonCarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected.
Hey, PLN January 4th, 2020, and here I am out for Fresh Air at 5 in mid-afternoon. This morning I woke, it was pouring rain, and I was too sore because we got out playing and tobogganing this weekend and my body hurt really bad, so I slept in. But this afternoon, after a good day of being back in the office, in my desk at school, working with my students online for the day, I got home, needed to get out and go for a walk. So I've gone for my walk, feeling better, muscles are a bit more limber, which is really, really good. All right, so today as I'm walking for Fresh Air at 5, and I wanted to say that I was listening to the Staff Room Podcast, episode 67, as Shay and Pav shared with us their one word for 2020. 2020, no, it's 2021. My goodness, I did it again. I haven't made that mistake too many times today. Anyhow, Shay and Pav's one word for 2021 is amplify. In this episode, Shay and Pav talk about their one word for last year, which was us, and how they worked on us being themselves individually, them as a podcast team, and them as a community beyond their podcast. Fantastic to hear. Really cool to hear. I like to hear people's reasons for their words, because a word on its own has little meaning other than to the people whom that word belongs to. This year's word is amplify. They want to amplify voices. They want to amplify their own voice and get their voice further and out there. They talked about how as we amplify their own voice, that they don't want to just be making noise, but they want to represent teachers and thoughts from teachers. They also want to amplify their students' voices in their teaching spaces. And that's one way to do that, is through getting kids to create content that talks about who they are. I'm thinking about this now as I'm starting up my podcast at Fresh Air at 5. Episode should be dropping maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. So you can catch that on at Fresh Air at 5. Thanks, Shay and Pav. Happy day. Bye. Hey, PLN, it's Tuesday, January 5th, 2020, and we're back to school in my place where we're at. This morning, I listened to episode 234 of Teach Better Talk as Jeff and Ray talked with Brianna Kurtz, who is a professor. She's got her doctorate in math leadership, I believe it's called. And so thank you, Brianna, I probably got that wrong, for sharing your journey with us as you grew as an educator and got to where you are now. I think the thing that stood out to me most was your authenticity about sticking with making mistakes in front of students and watching them see you process those mistakes and those challenges, because that's a big lesson that we can have. Thanks for your passion for math and STEM education, and I'm going to follow you on Twitter. Thanks so much. Got one more podcast to listen to before I'm done at Fresh Air at 5. Thanks. Bye. All right, a bit further down the road this morning, I listened to episode 235 of Teach Better Talk as Jeff and Ray talk with Thomas Gibson. So actually not Thomas, Tom Gibson. Thank you, Tom, for talking with Jeff and Ray on Teach Better Talk. Your words this morning are like a boost and a significant breath of fresh air as I'm out here on Fresh Air at 5. You know, I appreciate your problem-solving situations and figuring out how to work through stuff. That background you have in sound engineering is very much about having a problem that you need to be able to figure out, because you need to be able to record some sound so people can hear a message that someone's sharing. So thanks for your words of wisdom in your years of teaching, and talking about that failure and your lesson from jiu-jitsu. You're either winning or you're learning, and I think that's important, and about also having a positive attitude. Thank you, Jeff and Ray, Tom Gibson, for your words. You go check out your website and your YouTubes. All right, happy Tuesday. Bye-bye. And one more thing for January 5th, 2020. This audio that you're hearing right now in the video is going to come out as part of episode 3 of Fresh Air at 5 podcast. Holy smokes, I'm producing a podcast, and I'm thankful for the help of Chris Nessie of House of Ed Tech. Thank you, Chris, for helping me and working with me to support the production of this thing. Chris's suggestion was that I just take the audio from my morning weekly videos that I do, my daily videos, and put them together, because somebody will listen. So if you'll listen, I'm hoping you will. Stay tuned to Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts for at Fresh Air at 5 podcast. It'll actually be called Fresh Air at 5 podcast. And on Twitter, you can follow the podcast at Fresh Air at 5, all as words and one word. All right. Happy Tuesday. Just thought I'd get that out there again. Thank you, everybody. Bye. Hey, PLN, January 6, 2021, and it is Wednesday morning out here for Fresh Air at 5. This morning, I listened to Reflect Ed with AJ Bianco, episode 6. Thanks, AJ, for your podcast and your vulnerability as you share a reflection of 2020 and what's going to happen for 2021 with you, with plans. All right, you asked me to do some homework. My homework is this. What am I looking forward to, or what am I grateful for from 2020? I'm grateful for the slowdown. I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend time with my family during quarantine. One thing I'm looking forward to leaving behind will be the masks. You know, that's, I guess, COVID, but not wearing masks in the future. Actually, you know what? I think it's more the leaving behind the fear of what COVID is. We didn't really understand it. We have a better idea of it now, so we can operate with it and understand it. My one word for 2021 is appreciate, and looking around and appreciating and focusing on the things that are happening so I can be aware of them. That's my reflection. Thanks, AJ. Peace. As I'm nearing out the end of Fresh Air at 5 this morning, I listened to episode 75 of Got Tech, the podcast, as Eric Geis shares his toolkit for 2020 and the tools that have made an impact in his classroom for him and his students. And Eric, what a list. My goodness, man, that was awesome to hear you talk about all these tools and the relevance and the uses for them for yourself and your students. Many to check out, too many for me to mention individually here, but I really like how you have the audio podcast with Sodaphonic. That's a browser extension right there in the browser, something students can get to. There's a whole lot of things that we can talk about. I continue to encourage you to give Adobe Spark a try for graphics. And you know what, Eric, thanks for your support. Thank you for your thoughts as we get started with podcasting. Nice to hang. Talk to you. Bye-bye. One more thing, January 6, 2021. Well, this is the day after I push publish on Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. You may be listening to this already in Fresh Air at 5, the podcast, or you might be hearing it on my Twitter channel. But regardless, thanks for listening. I really dig that. That's super awesome that you're listening to the ramblings of this teacher reflecting on his learning early in the morning. I want to give a special thank you to Chris Nessie for taking time last night to do a couple things. One, he invited me to the Roundtable Podcaster Summit, first one for 2021 that Tim Cavey puts on, and talk about upping your game and being inspired by great people. We had the likes of Tim Stevenson, Dan Krynas, Jeff Bradbury, Alfonso Mendez. I'm missing somebody. Oh, Chris Nessie himself, Tim Cavey, and there's one other. Oh, Eric Geis, you were there too. And so it was great to listen and hang out with these guys, listen to them talk about their craft of podcasting, look at their websites. And you know what, gentlemen, I appreciate the encouragement and allowing me, the new guy on the block, to step into this. So I'm walking in my studio right now, recording the audio through a video. I'm going to stitch it all together, and you should be able to find my first podcast with a trailer at FreshAirAtFive, found on, where was that? We went to Anchor FM. So I've got a webpage there. You can go listen there, and it should come out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify later this week or so. Thank you, Chris Nessie, for your work last night and helping me get set up. And thanks to all the rest of you for your encouragement, and Tim for your encouragement as well. All right. Happy Wednesday. Bye-bye. And AJ Bianco, I want to thank you for being part of the Podcaster Summit last night. Forgot your name in the list, but I appreciate you and your reflection podcast that you do, Reflect Ed. All right. Thanks. Hey, PLN, it's a bit later on the day, and I'm at work now, and I just come across my Twitter feed, the 3 Caffeinated Coaches Episode 1 launch, and you know what? I see that there is Becky Calling, Georgina Dean, and Shannon Moore, who are the 3 Caffeinated Coaches, talking about leadership, talking about their journeys, and oh, wow, ladies, it was so fun to listen to you talk and just have a conversation, which sounds super fun, and drinking caffeinated drinks, and how you are in different parts of the world and collaborating in a podcast. So congratulations on the launch of your podcast. I like the conversational authenticness of what I'm hearing. And yes, we are all leaders in our spaces as teachers, as coaches, and we all have a role to make a difference in education. All right, so I'm just going to add this to my Fresh Air at 5 podcast, which also started today. I guess I got to get that Spotify link out there, and I was waiting for Apple Podcasts and everything else to populate, but I'll have to wait on that, but I should get this out myself for my Fresh Air at 5 podcast, which is now on Spotify. Happy day. Okay, bye-bye. Hey, PLN, Thursday, January 6, 2020, out for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and I'm super excited to be up and at it. And man, we've had 4 days. This is day 4 back to school, and it's been pretty good. I've really enjoyed being back to school after the break. I was anticipating being back to school and looking forward to it, but you know what? It's been really fantastic. Highlight for me yesterday, I got to work with our grade 3 to 5 students, creating videos and working in Adobe Spark. They've been working on this project for a little bit of time and using the Adobe Spark app in their Chromebooks, and they have, all got their presentations look at exactly the same because they've stuck with not knowing how to make them different. So yesterday I got into music, changing the background music in their Adobe Sparks, which was one fun feature I like about Spark, as well as themes. Not a whole lot of choices in there, but you know what? In a room of 15 students, when they're working on their Sparks, we can get 15 different looking presentations that includes their voice in Adobe Spark. My plug for Spark this morning. All right, Eric, take a look at Spark. Can make videos too. All right, this morning on Fresh Air at 5, I took a listen to My EdTech Life with Fonz Mendoza, and he had guest Dr. Dan Krynas on his show. And Dan, thank you so much for sharing your journey. Thanks for asking Fonz questions as you guys were going through, as you are a podcaster and you can't just not ask questions, because that's how we learn things from each other. It was great to hear you leading in that way. And thank you for sharing your acronym SCOPE, where we have setting clear expectations, getting out of our C for comfort zone, seeing the opportunities, having purpose. What's the purpose of what you're doing? I think P was purpose. And E is enthusiasm and empowerment for leaders. And myself as a leader, I am a leader. And these are things that I need to focus on in my classroom and in my workspace with my colleagues. All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Have a fantastic Thursday. Have a great day. Thanks, guys. Bye. One more thing, January 7, 2020. And well, I just wanted to say Dr. Dan Krines and Alfonso Mendez, as you gentlemen were part of the Podcasters Roundtable that I was invited to join on Teachers on Fire by Chris Nessie. So thanks, gentlemen, for being there that night. That was January 5th on Tuesday night. That was 2 days ago. Seems like it's been a lot longer than that because, my goodness, my learning has grown and enriched. And thanks to the help of Chris Nessie and the likes of yourself for spending time building into me. And follow-out of that roundtable discussion was the launch of the 3 C's podcast, the 3 Caffeinated Coaches Corner, I think it's called, can't remember exactly, podcast with Sharon Moore, Georgina Dean, and Becky Calling, as they have started their podcast and got inspired by being at the round table. And then after the fact, Chris Nessie did a live session with myself as a coaching tutorial set of how to set up an Anchor to get your podcast out there. So, wow, it's been crazy. 2 podcasts launched within the past 2 days. My podcast, Fresh Air at 5, has hit Apple Podcasts now, Spotify, it's on Anchor FM. You could follow me on Twitter at Fresh Air at 5, as well as check out my podcast webpage by going to my site, BryonCarpenter.com, and clicking on the Fresh Air at 5 podcast, which will take you over to the podcast webpage. All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. And wow, my learning is just going up. I was up till 12:30 this morning. Then I got up at 5 o'clock to hit the street so I could come out here and record and listen and learn. And it's just been a beautiful thing. So love it. And that's it. Happy Thursday. Okay, bye-bye. Hey, PLN, it's Friday, January 8th, 2020. And today it's raining. And, but not too bad. Out for my morning walk. Excited about the end of the week. And you know, it's only been 4 days so far, but I'm ready for the weekend after that first week back in the classroom and at school. Today I've got some exam supervision going on that I gotta do, marking for my online students, get all caught up with that, and get prepped for report cards coming at the end of the month. So yeah, those are things that are gonna be going on with Carpenter's World right now. All right, this morning on Fresh Air at 5, I listened to Shooks and Giff, Season 4, Episode 4, where Kim Polishuk was not hosting, but Jen Giffen host with Andy Losick, as they reviewed ed tech and some current things that are going on. Fantastic, Eric. Andy, did I say Eric? I might have said Eric. I meant Andy Losick and Jen Giffen. I'm sorry, guys. How they reviewed some ed tech, and they talked about Wonder, which is a video conference room gathering organic thing that Sandra Chow shared on Twitter that Jen picked up. That's fantastic. I'm going to take a look at that. I appreciate the free downloadable video content from the places that you talked. I can't remember exactly. One of them was pickerel, kind of like the fish that Andy said, but there's some video and some pictures that are in there, which is pretty nifty, that can be used for projects, as well as the I'm blanking right now. The things where you have all the stuff on the same page. Oh my goodness, I really blanked. It's really bad. They're called Hyperdocs. Hyperdocs. And the Hyperdoc collection set that Jen has curated with Andy. Go take a look at that and up your game a little bit. And thanks for listening. Take care. Happy day, Jen and Andy. Take care. Bye-bye. One more thing, January 8th, 2021. And so as I'm wrapping up my weekday walks this morning. I'm almost home. Looking forward to it because it's really wet out here today. I just wanted to say thanks for listening today. And if you want to catch me on Apple Podcasts, I've got a podcast that has just started. Most of you probably know that, but maybe not. It's Fresh Air at 5, all one word. You can catch it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor FM at this point. And it just launched this past week on Tuesday night. And so that's the first thing. This will be my second episode at the end of the second episode. So thanks for watching. Appreciate your support and being here. And if you want to leave me a voice message over there on Anchor FM, you can do so. There's a message button you can push, or drop me a tweet, or send me an email somehow. All right. Appreciate you. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, PLN, Saturday, January 9th, 2020, Fresh Air at 5, midday-ish. Not early in the morning. It is Saturday, and I slept in and chilled out and had a cup of coffee and listened to Teachers on Fire Roundtable, 10,000 push-up discussion, and, gotta catch my breath. That's something I gotta work on is my recovery time as I hold my phone up and start recording. I'm huffing and puffing, but that's part of the thing. So anyhow, this episode of Fresh Air at 5, today, I listened to Jake Miller, episode 75 of Educational Duct Tape Podcast, as he does a couple things. First thing he did was he talked about me reflecting on this video from back a while ago, hopefully it's not too windy right now, about the need for an educational toolkit, but not having too many tools in that toolkit, and making sure that we can not be weighted down by that. Jake, that was surreal. That was crazy surreal. You know, the whole thing is about having all these things that we can do with technology, and then from there we get excited, like listening to this episode as you talk to Claudio Zavella Jr. about Adobe and student voice and creation tools, and holy cow, I'm feeling weighted down because Photoshop scares me and other things. No, that doesn't really scare me, but I don't use it. But you get into all these things, and is it meeting my needs? No, it's not. Okay, at the end of your episode, and I'm going to jump into one more thing in a moment and talk about Claudio and his work that he's doing and his inspiration. But at the end of your podcast, episode 75, he talked about the adjacent possible. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit here, about how being involved in listening to podcasters and hearing what I hear from different people about different things has got me going in the podcast direction. So you're listening to this. This is the third last segment of episode 2 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'll talk about that in my second one more thing in a moment. One more thing, January 9th, 2021. This episode of Fresh Air at 5, I listened to episode 75 of Educational Duct Tape Podcast, and Claudio Zavella Jr. was on. Holy cow, was I excited to hear this. I was so psyched. I've been looking forward to hearing this since I heard Jake was going to have Claudio on. Thank you, Claudio, for sharing a bit about your journey, hearing where you're from a little bit more, and the work that you're doing, because this guy here is inspired by you. So I watch your videos on YouTube. I follow you on Twitter. I start doing some Adobe Spark stuff, do that in my classroom, listen to you. And you know what? My colleagues know who you are, and I appreciate your engagement in sharing your knowledge. Appreciate so very much. So Claudio, big hand clapping to you. This is my one more thing. If you're not following Claudio, you need to follow him on Twitter and Instagram and watch his YouTube channel as he shares tutorial videos of making cool stuff. Been doing that. All right, that's it. Thanks so much. And one more thing for January 9th, 2021. As I'm running the corner here on my Fresh Air at 5 walk today, it's a beautiful day, nice and kind of cloudy, but not rainy. It's midday. I can see the mountains. It's totally beautiful. I'm going to put a picture of the mountains at the end of this video here, so you can see what the sunrise this morning looked like from my place. Fantastic. Absolutely. So anyhow, you're watching this, and I'm not sure if you know, but I've got a podcast that just started. started called what? Fresh Air at 5 podcast. You can catch that podcast on Apple Podcast, Overcast, Spotify, and Anchor at this point. So if you want to take a listen, I really appreciate it. You can go and subscribe in any of those places and not miss upcoming episodes. This is the final segment of episode 2, which is going to be airing at midnight on January 15th. So that's this coming Friday. It'll be coming out at midnight. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you for your support. And Jake and Claudio, you guys made my day. And the rest of you that I listened to in this episode, you all made my week. Appreciate so much. Take care, and Carpenter out for episode 2 of Fresh Air at 5. Okay, bye-bye.
As my one word for 2020 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen for the very first time as I've created a podcast experience for you to listen to. Subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes, and please give me a review on Apple Podcasts to get my voice out there further.